you made a very interesting point there at the end about who the crowd is, and this idea that maybe it would be your internal employees that are rating ideas because they're best qualified to make those decisions. Maybe you can speak just a little bit about kind of crowdsourcing as we traditionally think of it, in terms of that, the unwashed masses,
right.
And whether there's a qualification to that crowd that's
well,
important.
No, I think that's an actually very interesting point to crowd and how you define crowd, because crowd in the sense of everybody is probably not appropriate to think about as a source of information for a company. I mean, there might be some good ideas out there somewhere, but if you, so when you think of it as a community, community is built around people who have a vested interest in some way in connecting with a company. So one of the important pieces of from the customer end that we've really started to understand is that we talked about customer relationship management, and I think in our head, and a lot of companies believe that the company then manages the customer, right? That's what we just said, customer relationship management. The acronym's wrong. It was really customer managed relationship. So it should have been CMR. And so if the customer owns the relationship, which they do, by the way, and you're fool yourself if you think you own your customer. So if the customer owns their relationship and they choose to have a relationship with you, so in other words, I built a customer community and they came. They wanted to have some engagement with my company, then that is a crowd that could be engaged from a wisdom of crowd standpoint to provide input into my product development process. Why? Because they have a vested interest in the product. They already have self-selected to be engaged with my company. And in that group, we have influencers, we have people that are advocates for the company, and I want to identify them because they're important in this whole community. And I want to build that community in such a way that I continue to create an experience with the customer that causes them to be engaged with my company. And if they are, then collecting ideas from them, they have a vested interest in my success, because my success as a company is their success as a customer. So that's the difference, I think, in saying, unwashed masses, maybe not interesting. I read this thing, and I can't remember, I should credit it to who wrote it, but I don't remember. But, it was this idea that why do we assume that crowds are wise? Because they may not be. And we need to define this in a more careful way as we think about this versus, a crowd, it must be wise. It might not be. It might be the lowest common denominator, not the highest. So yeah, that external piece though, but that's about engagement. And once the customer's engaged, they have a vested interest and they'll participate.